Hello, this is Kraig Smyth, MyBizGuide. Just wanted to say hi and personally invite everybody to tonight's workshop, Lessons from Addiction, starting at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. This is one of my favorite topics. It's about the tools that we grew in that challenging life experience. How did we get through it? Talk about challenge, some of embracing challenge, transcending anxiety, connection to self, connection to inner environments, external environments, some of those kind of things that we can take with us after the substance is gone. So it'll be a good one. Hope to see you there. Thanks. I think I'm going to go ahead and start here. But this workshop. This is lessons from addiction, and there's a lot to be said about that. This is one of my favorite topics because, man, addiction in itself covers just so much, especially when we take the substance away, when we take the physical substance away and start looking at how people relate to things. It's just really, really important for us to have more of a holistic understanding of what actually is going on. So many people have been through addiction with physical substances, but what happens when we take that physical substance away? What's left, and what did we really learn other than the classic drugs are bad? Okay, all right, yeah, there's definitely substance abuse issues, but looking at addiction related to non-physical things or non-ingested things. So yeah, I guess I'll go ahead and start. And we'll see how this goes. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to do a kind of an overview and then circle back, because this could be, this is an ongoing conversation. This is definitely not just a one and done. So, and I've got some notes. Look, I've got 4.5 pages of notes to go through, and I'll go through some of these, and then and then last time what we did, we circled back around, then we had the after party, and then kind of more of a informal conversation. I know Tom's familiar with that. And yeah, so I definitely appreciate all of you being here, and the support that I get from everybody. And there's an elder in the house. Imagine that. And Chia Tom Hollowhorn, I think you have a song for us to start off. Since we've got a traditional person in the house, I'll let Tom do a traditional song here. Because if you know me, you know that, yes, we defer to the Oyate, to the people, for guidance. Absolutely. That's what he said. He messaged me. He said he's got a song. Along Kihoka. Hoka.
Oh, man. Can you hear me?
How?
Oh, hey, Loa was you, Wakareshni Ash, Wochek was you Bluha. So, hey, what's that? I didn't make the song. I didn't make a song because I was too busy hitchhiking. But I have a prayer, brother.
We'll check
if that's good. I'm gonna light mine. Oh,
your video's off too, but I heard the lighter going. I don't know what's going on.
I'm trying to. I have to.
I got mine.
There you go. I gotta hold this. I'm holding my phone jack here, Chuck. We'll check your work out. There you go. I can see myself. Oh. Gashila wakataka. Ujima katate open a machbia hetcha. Wanale abetu dala. Naha tu wopila uyankovich or wopila chichio. Ne takukuki tokata kyale abetu. Iohila uyankovich ale. Misukala wa hochaka ki garaka ki he. Misukala washichu ichaje ichapi ki he. Kraig wana taha hocheka. Wopila gaga charina iwa takukuku. wa uspe unyak ki hina pilamaya. Ne tokata ki lina oyate ki hina suta omanik hina wo pila ichicha. Hina iha hecha wocheke karab ki hina yanach ki pilamaya. Tukte triopa maza triopa hecha ish okuja tipe hu wa unshe. Wocheke gaga hina yanach ki pilamaya. Ho lina iha takuki washteki oyakuki tokata wopila ichichelo. Oh, hechutulo mitaku oyase.
Oh,
Okahe.
Mitakiasi. Oh, Mitakiasi.
Mataklasi.
Well, Tonka. Yeah, that's always really appreciated. All of my
Yeah, pila.
Yoshpe to show up, and you know, those of you, I know, I think it's all Indians here now. So if any non-native
Hey
people
now,
show
we're out
up
here on the
show up
prairie.
later, and you know, we'll see this part of the beginning, but hey, you know what? It's reality who we are. This is my life, and I'm so appreciative that I have these people, man. I'm like almost gonna tear up now. That I have you know, my Joshpe and Tiwahe, na Oyate, my family, my extended family, the people here. Man, all the lessons, you know, everything I'm going to say is Yeshka. You know, I try to translate. I try to use what I know in English and say some things that are kind of common knowledge, really. So I don't claim to say anything new at all. I'm just trying to put things in words to, you know, for mainstream to you know, to digest. And I, you know, I use a lot of contemporary you know, biology and natural sciences and stuff like this. And that's, you know, a lot of my background. So and of course real life experience, you know. And I think that I was talking to another relative that's watching here on the Facebook. You know, addiction is one of those languages that transcends cultures, you know. So what are we doing? You know, we're looking for places that we connect, right? And so my opening words, and Tom, look, I got like a formal program here, but I've been reading from it, and then we'll then talk and read and talk and read, and then go on the end. But here's my opening statement: is addiction is disconnect. See the misplaced instinctual drive to connect attached to everything except where it actually fits. Where does our growth fit? Disconnect from self, disconnect from inner and external environments, and understanding the natural processes and parameters in which keep us aligned and that facilitate wellness. So disconnect, I say that the beginning of addiction is that disconnect, and people trying to fill the voids with everything that goes there. And even these terms, cognitive dissonance and delusion, when people ignore themselves, they ignore their inner process. They ignore their inner ecosystem and the parameters that keep our inner ecosystem healthy. Some people would say our moral compass, you know, not to be confused with one size fits all morals, but our instincts on, you know, where we need to be, what we should do and not what we should do in relation to everything. Not, you know, that if I can, and since I have some representation here, Mitakiasi connection to everything, not just, oh, you know, I have an idea, I'm going to go with it, but I have an idea, and let me compare my idea to everything around me. How does that fit in with my community? How does that fit in with my environment? How does that fit in with not just my wants, because want is ego. How does it fit in with my physical, mental, emotional, spiritual ecosystem? And, you know, understand these ecosystems. So this is what I'm saying. The first part of addiction is replacing reality with ideology. the first ideology is that we can override these natural parameters by discounting process and filling voids with something else. See ego.
Mm.
So, it's hard to have a conversation about addiction without first talking a little bit about, what is addiction? And we're gonna get into that a little bit more. But yeah, that disconnect. And of course, there's some people tuning now. Of course, the title for this workshop is Lessons from Addiction. And so, of course, we're going to, draw some parameters and refresh a little bit on addiction. And the main point is that through addiction, through this addiction process that I think most of us have either went through personally or been around, we've seen this. So what are the lessons we learned aside from not engaging in substance abuse? And this is one of the main things, is this environment and connection to self and connection to our internal ecosystems, our mental, emotional, spiritual ecosystems. Those are the first things that on an interpersonal level that we saw that those things were really suffering when going through addiction. And then collateral damage. So maybe people have some addictions. A lot of people think about addiction to substance abuse, but there's addiction to ideologies also. Addiction to, I'll just lay out a couple of these, and bear with me, because if you hang out long enough, it'll make sense. But addiction to printed currency, written law, and even clocks. Yeah, clocks. So what I'm saying is that these are unnatural things in the evolutionary context of our species, right? So now we're going to use some science. These are unnatural things that are in our habitat that as a species in our whole context, which science says approximately 300,000 years Homo sapien, 4 million years Homo species, forever, that we have these unnatural things that we're having to relate to, right? Nothing on this planet, including our species, has ever revolved around printed currency, around written law, mandated behavior, or a simple clock. But yet that's our habitat, right? That's our environment. And if we talk about addiction, one of the main things that we use to transcend addiction was what? Changing our external environment. Change our external environment. Don't hang out with the places that you're liable to drink, do coke, smoke cigarettes, eat sweets. Don't go to the bakery first thing in the morning, whatever it is. So here's now I'm going back to the script a little bit just to make sure I'm thorough. And this format worked pretty good last time, so we'll see. This is all new going through this, and again, I appreciate everybody being here. You may know addiction from the context of substance abuse. However, in this workshop, we're going to discuss the concept of addiction without attachment to physical substance and examine the experience of addiction through a psychological profile. But also, when we went through the addiction journey, we develop skills that help us transcend negative cycles and grow through this journey. Those skills have such a huge positive impact on and contribution to contemporary society in a variety of circumstances. Let's look at addictive behavior both with and without physical substance and seeing commonalities, like what are symptoms of addiction, addiction in behavior, thought process, addiction as past negative cycles and neural pathways that have been grown, addiction in societal construct, and addiction in the collective. We'll be going over the overuse and abuse of tools as well. So again, the main point, and there's a lot of little side trails that we can take, but the main point was that through addiction, in the addiction process, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. A lot of people have negative connotations of addiction, and rightly so, and understanding, and I'm definitely not agreeing with that. not disagreeing with that, right? Drugs are bad, okay? But also going through that, a lot of us discovered our true self, our inner core. And I'm going to point to something that I like to pass along, is that a lot of people have said that the worst thing that happened to them was also the best thing that happened to them. Take, for example, car accidents, horrific car accidents. People, when the human gets put in a challenge of life or death on a physical, mental, emotional, spiritual level, our core essence kicks out all the taxes and the bald tires and the significant others and the printed currency and the clocks and the written law and the fancy shoes and all these kind of things. And the core essence has a tendency to remember life without those things, and gives us a little clearer view. Whoop, my heater's getting too hot. Gives us a little bit clearer view, gives us a different perspective of things, and kind of gives us a refresher, fresh slate. If we talk about environment, there's a lot of things in contemporary environment that aren't conducive to wellness and very enabling. There's so much to say about that, which I'll get back to. But to go to
Did we freeze?
It sounds
Yeah,
like
we
it.
froze.
I'll tell him. Hold on.
all right. Okay, so
Heart is back.
back to where we were about lessons from some of the things that really that we could learn from our experience, other than, yes, not abusing physical substances. Yeah, we got that now, right? Okay, but really, what did we go through? What's the internal experience that we had? And before we got disconnected from the interweb there, we were talking about hitting bottom and getting that real profound experience with self, that poignant experience with self, when it's just us, when we had to connect to that challenge of life or death and had to say, look, this just needs to happen. There's no, way past that point of should I or should I not. Is it, we need to do this? And I mentioned that challenge of life or death is really absent in contemporary society, but that's a part of life itself. And I will get back on bashing contemporary society. Don't worry, we'll get there. But what are some of these things that help us engage, challenge, and grow forward, and yeah, grow through our challenges, connecting to internal environment, external environment. We went through that. There's some of those things. So yeah, what skills did we grow from our addiction journey? That's right. Everything has a lesson, and some key skills develop when growing through addiction. Einstein said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result, right? So not to get stuck in that negative eddy, in those incomplete cycles, in those unfulfilling cycles, trying to fill our personal voids with external things, ignoring that internal ecosystem. And talk about habitat, that's just a really key thing, because I'll take another line from no pun intended, a line from contemporary science in wildlife biology. Says you can't have a healthy organism in an unhealthy environment. Well, if we don't have good examples of societal cohesion, of healthy society, and society that recognizes natural habitat and interconnecting ecosystems, how does that affect us as individuals, right? So we've grown up in a society that doesn't recognize some core essential things to life on this planet. And And also, here's some new lessons from addiction is understanding these kind of things. What's our societal habitat? And, you know, it's a reflection of the individual. And when we say enabling, societies enabling addiction, Gabor Mate, I think the foremost human behavioral specialist, what do they call them? Psychologist, physiologist. You know, he points to that pre-colonial societies didn't have addiction. So looking at these things in contemporary society, well, of course, you know, lack of connection to natural habitat is, you know, scientifically, if you take an organism off its evolutionary trajectory, of course you're going to have an issue. And instead of an organism having to go out and have all the natural diversity that our species had for 99.999% of its existence, and try to replace that with some simplistic pseudo systems that are centered around value placeholder, printed currency, a lifespan placeholder, a clock. You know, a clock doesn't reflect natural lifespans, doesn't reflect natural cycles. Nothing in nature goes at a steady pace like that. There's ebb and flow. And of course, you know, written law, mandated behavior doesn't work. Lessons from addiction, just quit. Well, there's no just quitting. There's no making people quit. We have to quit from what? Everybody, our own volition, right? So talking about how humans actually work, here's another lessons from addiction. How do humans actually work? Lessons from addiction says no one quits until they're ready. We're talking about people at their core people, down to you know, our core essence and how people actually work as humans. Well, that's not how society works. Society still has this delusion of mandating behavior, even though it's been proven time and time again that you can't mandate morality, quote unquote morality, but you can't mandate behavior. We have the only time that we have cohesive societies and what is when everyone's there on their own volition and they have understanding of why we're all here and how we all work together. So lessons from addiction, of course, you know, we've got examples in still around that know these things in our indigenous societies, right, Tom? So you know, and yeah, Gabor Mate points to that. So, you know, what's the societal aspect of addiction? Because a lot of people, when going through addiction, they look at it as, you know, themselves, but they don't look at the environment. Oh, again, wildlife biology 101, you can't have a healthy organism in an unhealthy environment. Okay, that makes it a little bit more difficult to just quit, right? If people don't understand, and especially, I think this points to our interconnectedness really strongly, that where do we stop and the collective begins? Well, there's maybe no really firm line there. And maybe there is, maybe there isn't, maybe both things are true at the same time. All these things are happening, but people look at, you know, people looking at themselves without looking at the big picture and the big influence. Charlene, did you have a question?
I don't know if it's just me. This is all going so fast that my brain can't keep up. So if it's just me, then just keep going at that pace. But if it's a little bit fast for everybody else, then you might slow down a tiny bit. I'm not sure.
What my goal is to do an overview of all this.
Okay.
And then go back.
Okay, good. It's like,
this is a lifelong conversation. This is a lifelong conversation that started for me, 40 some odd years ago, and is going to go on, and we're trying to say that we're going to do something with it in an hour and a half. So I'd like to say that this is just the beginning, just the overview. I'd recommend, if anyone's got any notes, has any things that, resonate with them, or has any questions, to, write down, and then just like we did last time, to do a little bit of an after party, and to go back and look at some of these things. So I am trying to go through
Okay.
And give just a little bit of an overview. And I plan on, this is an ongoing conversation, and it needs to be, I think, the forefront of contemporary society as a whole needs to be having this conversation. We need to review it and revisit it and keep it in our mental ecosystem, keep it in our habitat. And that's really what I'm trying to do, is keep these conversations in our habitat. And I want to start having these workshops. Of course, I'm writing a book and be putting out other videos. So, we hear something once and okay, that's okay. But wait, can we go back? And yes, definitely circling back in layers and layers and layers. So that's my strategy is, I'm trying to kind of go over this a little, just kind of give a light overview and then come back to it.
Okay.
Natural law. Life lessons are flowing through us all the time. There's another thing that I'd like to say about this whole lessons from addiction, is that this is a real big challenge for a lot of us. Did we get anything out of that challenge other than transcend our physical substance abuse? And pointing to these connections to self, pointing to these understandings of environment, pointing to these embracing challenge, pointing to these societal issues is really a big part of where I'm going with this. So to reverse engineer, our life experiences, we went through a really big challenge. Did we receive all of the education from that challenge? And are we using that? Are we using our education from that challenge to continue? Are we still using what we learned from addiction to transcend other challenges, to engage other challenges, to connect with our inner environment, and understand our external environment and where those things connect?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, I can't. My video went off. I had a question where you said environment. Lessons from addiction. Here in Lakota land, in Lakota country, my my coming up 27 years of sobriety, I noticed something. Why my people, what kind of addiction is strongly here? And I noticed that the strongest addiction here is alcoholism. And then you mentioned cohesive society. Well, guess what? There was a society here that started all this alcoholism among my people, and that came from the forts, from the cavalry forts. So that's one of the main lessons. Like I tell my children, my oldest one, she's 19, she's going to be graduating here. That's what I told her. I said, anytime you do something, I said, you're a weon now, my girl. So you're 19, you can make your own decision. Now you go in a good way, but remember something. When you start wanting that addiction, there's a consequential favor for it. It may be a good addiction, but remember, there's always a consequential ending for it. You could say, oh, I wanted the casino. That's an addiction, yeah. But what happens when you win that casino money? you get overly distraught, and after you give away money and you forget your bills. So when you come back, what do you gotta pay back? Or you gotta pay your bills, and you're sitting there complaining, whining. Yeah, I should have. See, that's another lesson I told my children. When you get to that point, any kind of addiction, I don't care what it is, just remember something. This is what made me walk in a good manner, in a good way, was what my grandma, my Auntie Grace said. My ancestor didn't survive this massacre. My ancestor didn't fight in that little bighorn. So you could walk around here and be drunk and be whatever. You're a man. My ancestor survived, so my family, your children, my grandchildren could walk in a good way. So that's what I told my 19-year-old. She's signing up for the military. She's going to the Marine Corps. And I told her that's a lot of drinking there. So you're going to be going against a lot of things. So anyways, that's just something I wanted to put in there with the Calvary Fort addiction, along with you're talking about cohesive society. Because, in our days, my dad said these cavalry would bring 100 gallons of liquor to these forts, and they'll say 50 gallons for the leaders, and they'll entice them with that 50 gallon, and the other 50 gallons they'll hang around the forters. He said they would put whatever in that other 50-gallon: rattlesnake head, laudlin, cow poop, and he said the people still drank it, and they still got drunk. So that's just something, I walking this road, dealing with addiction is something I really noticed, and I'm doing a little research on it. So I'll have something for you, in this next upcoming Zoom.
Yeah.
Belong.
And that's something that Tom, I'm kind of leading all this is leading to that, is leading to traditional wisdom and traditional societies. And again, I'm going to point to Gabor Mate that says that traditional societies had the best social structure, had the best community structure for raising children. Oh, well, if you've got the best for raising children, what do children that are raised well grow into? Adults, and so on, and all that structure. So yeah, all this is going to definitely fall under decolonization. I'm doing some of the fine points to it, and to try and build that holistic perspective for people. But yeah, looking at things from, and I just always say it like this, and I know Tom's heard, probably everyone's heard me say, look at the humans as a species, and that's why I use that wildlife biology. Look at it as a species. How did we live for so long? And then what are these things that were introduced into our environment that aren't natural? And then how were we forced into an unnatural environment? And then, oh, guess what? That's also science. It introduced unnatural variables into a natural ecosystem. You had the species was living this way for so long, and then now there's abrupt changes. Science would say that even if those changes were quote unquote good, and I don't know how they do that in the whole context of things, but just for example, just because you introduce changes at such a rapid rate is not in line with natural development. So yeah, thanks, Tom. Appreciate that. Yeah, so let's see here. I said this before, the worst thing that can happen to us is also the best thing. And what I was saying, I think maybe Tom and Criseldo stepped away, but I was saying, let's look at this addiction as such a huge challenge, but what skills are we growing at the same time? Especially those of us that have, we transcended, we're not in the substance abuse anymore. What skills did we use? Because we're going to need those. And also we can help other people reach those skills, when especially for active users, to say, hey, reach down, see you're at the bottom right now. But there's a certain level of clarity available to you, and also understanding the habitat that you're in, also understand that embracing challenge and how to catch that, how to drive. Again, traditional societies implemented real life and death challenges voluntarily into their societies, and
Mhm.
still do, since Tom's here, I'll speak a little. We want with Cheapy, Sundance, Inipi, Sweat Lodge, Humblecha, Vision Quest. These things that traditional societies knew that there's challenge. Challenge facilitates growth. We're going to be challenged in life. That's part of the deal. What we need to do is we need to understand that, work within these parameters, understand why challenge is here on a holistic level. I think that one of the biggest things that people in contemporary society do, and one of the things that that inhibits people from growing through their addiction, is dissing challenge. There's all kinds of stuff here that I'm trying to stay on path, but like, entitlement, to think that to have this false narrative, oh, here's the delusion again, here's the ideology, right? Remember how we started this, the ideology that things should be easy. That's an ideology. That's an addiction. The psychology of most people in contemporary society have this ideology that life should be easy, but that's not based on any kind of reality at all. It's a total misnomer. It totally disregards all the wisdom from embracing challenge in the place of challenge. I say that if you're dissing challenge, you're telling the universe that you don't want to be here, because that's life. Challenge is in life, and what's the holistic understanding to how the planet that we live on in works?
That's crazy.
Challenge is part of that. So, here's a reading from my notes here. It's not about the physical substance that we're doing or not doing. It's about the mental, emotional, spiritual processes that we're doing or not doing, right? The first thing, if we're trying to quit substance, we have to change our mind first. It all starts from within. We have to change our mind. We have to say, I want change. I want wellness. And we identify that, oh, here's a physical substance, which is kind of the epicenter of this illness. It's the epicenter, but there's so much more going on. But okay, that's cool. That physical substance is what we needed to get in tune with ourselves and start that inner conversation. Here's another lesson from addiction, that inner conversation, to say, look, self, hey man, you gotta quit. You gotta stop. You gotta make some changes. So lessons from addiction introduced us to ourself in our voice that way. And we know we're talking to ourselves. There's no confusion. When you're an addict, you know who you're talking to. You're talking to yourself. And that's a good thing. We need that. We need that communication with ourselves. Let's see here. Got some notes. Some of these just already went through. Transcending addiction, growing, finding yourself, and how to process addiction, thought process, patterning our behavior, recognizing pattern recognition. One of the key things when we talk about intelligence, pattern recognition, and see, oh, there's these negative cycles that I keep engaging in, and my lack of growth, lack of complete cycles connected to substance. But yes, the substance, but also, recognizing cycles, recognizing when I do this, then this happens. Recognizing when I don't do this, something else happens. So we've got some choice there. Reading from my notes again, recognizing core self, transcending materialistic and egocentric concepts. All those things get in the way when we're trying to make these core level adjustments. We can't be thinking about, what I want. Oh, I want to get better. Okay, but what are you going to do? You can, as they say, want in one hand and shit in the other. See what fills up. You got to do accountability. Oh, there's lessons from addiction. It's our internal accountability that showed us how to get rid of that want and ego. What I say, ego is want without context. You know, say, oh, I want to feel better, so I'm going to do a line. Oh, but that's not the whole context. That's not the rest of our life. That's not how we affect those next to us. It's not how we interact with life in general. Transmuting anxiety to be able to sit with the uncomfortableness and face ourselves, to be able to sit down and quiet. Griselda, do you know any other words for quiet?
Anila.
There's
I
a
gotta
lesson there.
practice.
Say it again, Griselda.
Anila, Griselda. Anila.
Anila. Yeah,
Anila.
there's a lesson there. There's a lesson there to sit and quiet, you know. And here's the traditional, again, since I have Chia Talma. Thanks for allowing me to speak here and relay some of these insights that I've seen. There's lesson, and you know, in traditional societies, there was time that we had to be quiet and sit, especially when an elder's talking. Sit. And then, oh, well, guess what? We all have not only our physical, mental, emotional, spiritual habitats, but we also have our infant, adolescent, adult, elder habitats. When we sit with that uncomfortableness, tap into that elder, listen to that elder saying, shh, chill, stop, just stop, sit down, shut up. This is a conversation we had with ourselves and able to transcend addiction. So that's really, you know, that being able to sit and sit with that anxiousness, sit with apprehensiveness, to sit with that egocentric want, or that, where they say that jonesing, that fiending and jonesing, to sit and say, nope, just, you know, I'm going to sit with that, and I'm going to resist that. I'm going to resist that urge. Huge lesson there. Huge lesson there. See, we can take that when we resisted that urge to, I'm using some general terms here, when we resisted that urge to fix up again, we can take that, we can apply that to anything that we're trying to lessen our addiction to. And that can be words, ideologies. When someone says, oh, hey, you know, it's you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this. We've grown that resistance to that pressure. And so we can sit and say, you know what? I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to, and this is a little bit of a fine point, but I'm not going to put printed currency first in my life. Even though it's something in contemporary construct that we really can't get away from, but I'm not going to put it in my emotional ecosystem, in my mental ecosystem, in my spiritual ecosystem. You know, that's definitely, there's some meditation there. You know, I'm not gonna say, oh, written law is morality. I'm gonna sit and have some conversation with myself and transcend that. Inner environment, reading, when we just kind of went over this naturally, understanding and improving inner environment and inner physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. We saw how all those things go together. When we did this physical thing, oh, that messed up my mental, emotional, spiritual. So now what do I do? Now I got to do the self-talk with my mental. I got to cognitive go through, oh, why don't I want to do this? And look at all the things that this is screwing up, and look at the things that I'm not doing, and recognize how that attaches to our mental wellness and our spiritual wellness. Changing environment, recognizing that environment, you know, and not going to these places where I'm that's enabling to substance abuse. Oh, well, now later on, let's look at our environment, you know, again, and look at our relationships. How are those relationships? Are those healthy relationships? Are they facilitating growth, or are they really kind of not fulfilling? Are these conversations, are they fulfilling, empowering, or are they, you know, just, do we feel like we're spinning our wheels and not getting anywhere? So that's that same thing. That's taking what we saw in addiction and applying it to other places. Is society just spinning their wheels and not getting anywhere, or are they growing? Oh, addiction on a societal level. You know, we've transcended addiction on an individual level. What's the societal level? We'll get into that. Yes, doing the work. Doing the work in instinctual with energetic connection, and understanding the actual inner work, introspect, shadow work. Addiction introduced us to those concepts also. So I'm trying to say, let's look at some of these things and let's bring them around again. Ebb and flow, right? So we went through this challenge, we learned a lesson, and now when are we going to apply these lessons that we learned? That's that accountability and doing the work. Everyone just didn't go through this huge challenge in life of addiction to not learn something, to not be able to contribute that back to society and help ourselves grow and help society transcend these addictions. Now we can see addiction, those of us that have gone through it personally. So now let's look at that. Let's look at these other addictions to ideologies, basically people going through unfulfilling processes and incomplete processes, spinning their wheels. And what's more frustrating than people spinning their wheels? You know, getting stuck in that, those eddies, those negative eddies. And we see that as a society, people are not growing. They're spinning their wheels. So what are some of those things that we use to buckle down, to be quiet and buckle down and grab that inner strength and get out of that eddy, to swim out of that eddy, out of that whirlpool?
So addiction itself should have given us some skills, some developing skills to deal with ourselves.
That is exactly what I'm saying. That is the main point of the class, to deal with ourselves and society. And where do we give back on a societal level, right? Ebb and flow and cycles, right? We're not just here in a vacuum. All of us aren't just here in a vacuum. We all know these things. Oh, so now, you know, we have these commonalities.
I have a question, brother.
Yeah.
These lessons from addiction. Now, it's more on a level of a singular soul, right? A singular person. Because when you're talking and I'm listening and all that, I don't know why, but I could see my grandparents.
Huh.
My grandma never smoked a cigarette in her life.
Huh.
Never drank. My grandpa was like that. So together they were a teamwork. And through that, I seen how they supported each other. My grandma didn't sit there and watch a TV commercial about Budweiser and look at my grandpa and say, "Oh, you know what, honey, I need a beer." There was never like that. So in their teamwork, what I saw was mostly a prayer. they never gave up on each other. They never said, "Oh, I'm gonna go drink. You could stay here with the kid." Chelsea, that's what I was wondering. You have all these good avenues for this lessons of addiction, but you're gonna have some couples that are gonna be asking this question that I'm asking. Where do we tie into a couples? How do they deal with their addiction? How do they do their teamwork? Just to keep going at it without a consequential ending. Because that's something I know with addiction. There's a consequence with it. I drink a lot of coffee. Okay, well, you know what? I'm gonna use sugar. I have to go borrow sugar. I smoke cigarettes. That's from being a cop. I smoke cigarettes. Yeah, I could have a cigarette, but I'm gonna lead to another one. And here I go. Oh, late in the night, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, knocking at my sister's house. Sis, could I borrow a couple of sticks of cigarettes? I'm freezing butt, and it's wet. And well, there's your consequence, Tom. That's for your addiction. But anyway, brother, that's just my question, Chuck.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that for, and I appreciate the question and all questions, and especially if anyone, sees something, I'm just kind of starting this. My main goal is to, connect with the individual and say, what does these individuals learn, and then the societal, and what's going on in a society. And, Tom's grandparents, I would speculate that they were closer to like real challenge, and so less apt to get to be susceptible to addiction. When we have things to do, and I think that's one of these things in traditional societies, that we had things to do, like we had life things to do. We had to be sharp. We couldn't just be lazy and get off track and atrophy. So I hope this answers your question, Tom, but I'm trying to do this one for to help people bond with their strengths, their inner strengths, and to see things, and then to see it on a societal level. And of course, my ultimate, that is my ultimate goal, is that societal addiction. And then that hashtag decolonize, if we can, because I believe that starts with the individual. If an individual can see addiction in themselves, then they can see it on a societal level. And then we can start, deconstructing those societal ills that are, oppression for us all. And that a society is basically built on addiction and enabling, because that's a tough one. That's a tough one. I think we got to deconstruct the societal addiction in order to facilitate individual growth, and vice versa. Those things that ebb flow, that balance between the individual and societal, and making sure that the individual sees that connection on a societal level, and then we can see that reflection of the individual on a societal level. So that's kind of where I'm going with all this. And I'm trying to give people a more holistic view of addiction, not just the substance. Again, addiction in its non-physical form, addiction to ideology, societal addiction. And here's where I am in my notes. Societal addiction is our habitat. We have to recognize and transcend this. So a society not understanding of natural ecosystems, society is disconnected from natural external ecosystems because it's disconnected from natural internal ecosystems. Through addiction, we recognized our internal ecosystems. So now let's look and see, people in society are societal, right? Individual and societal. On a societal level, there's addiction. There's people that are going through the same motions, not growing. with unhealthy attachments to ideology predominantly. And by ideology, I mean, the ideology that you can mandate human behavior is an ideology. That's a big one. And I'm just talking about, life, how people work in general. The ideology that, capitalism is an ideology that we can have a functioning, cohesive society based on a piece of paper that we print versus things that have true value intrinsic to life: food, water, air, shelter, the human-centric things, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual wellness. Examples of addiction without physical substance. And we'll get back to these things later. But yeah, printed currency, clocks, written law, religious ideology, words, ideology of words, shovels, hammers, and axes. No, I was just kidding about the last part. When people say words, what the hell are you talking about? Words. All right. Bear with me. What I'm saying is that there's unhealthy attachments, right, to everything. Words, I'm using words and I write. It's a difference between, these are tools. Printed currency is a tool. It's a difference between use and abuse, use and overuse. They say that the difference between medicine and poison is the dose. So here's another thing about understanding addiction. What's lessons from addiction? So let's look at some of these fine points. When we overuse our words, we had a live lesson, Inila. When we overuse our words, are we slowing down? Are we using too many words? Are we slowing down and being quiet? Are we having that balance with ebb and flow? When we're overusing written words, when we hold up written law in front of our natural instincts in the context of what's happening now in our own moral compass, it's okay to revert to a paper and words and preconceived ideas. It's okay to check that out and to write it down, but it's not okay to hold it up in front of us and say, oh, well, this that was written a gazillion years ago says this, so this is where we're going forward. Where's the growth? That's not in the now, and there's no growing forward, right? Anybody, is there anyone that can challenge that? So, and everyone knows that that's a problem. That's a problem with contemporary law. And another,
Yeah, it's like gun law.
what's that? Written law?
Like
Right.
gun law. You can say don't grab guns, don't kill people, but doesn't mean that it's gonna stop from
Well, there's a
guns
whole,
killing.
I mean, the law, written law, it gets back to volition. It gets back to volition. And there's not really a right and wrong. There's understanding. And this is, what we're talking about in traditional cohesive cultures, cohesive societies, is that people had an understanding, like really what works and what doesn't work. And mandating behavior is one that doesn't work. What I was going to point to, addiction. And if I say, oh, well, if I say written law and talking about written law and addiction, and someone says, oh, well, what else are we going to do? That's addiction, because it's not identifying the problem. Addiction, lessons from addiction 101. First, you have to recognize there's a problem. Then you have to admit there's a problem, right? Well, the people jump ahead. Oh, what you can't do? What do you mean no written law? Blah, 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 and on and on and on. Right. But you can't mandate behavior, right? What about freedom? Where does that come into context? It's just people that are grasping at straws without really getting down into the nuances of what's going on and the holistic aspects of human behavior and life on this planet and all those kind of things. So that is addiction in itself, is wanting to jump ahead and lessons from addiction. Here we go again. Denial. Deny that there's a problem. deny that there's a problem. I'm saying there's a problem with written law. I didn't say that we shouldn't write anything down ever. I'm a writer. I'm not saying that. I'm saying the difference between use and overuse or abuse, understanding the limits of our tools. That's what I'm saying. So in that buckle down, in that, conversation where we're still with ourselves, let's transcend the anxiety around these things, sit with that uncomfortableness, and be able to look at some of these things in contemporary culture, some of these ideologies from a objective, logical viewpoint, and give ourselves some space to look at these things and, oh, what's the limits of tools? That's the bigger picture. What's the limits of tools? Let's apply these lessons from addiction to other aspects of life. Symptoms of addiction. And then I'm just now getting to the start of this. What is addiction? What is addiction? But yeah, repeating incomplete cycles around tools, medicine, ideology that results in lack of growth, leaving a core void unfulfilled. Addiction is disconnect. And this is my opening statement. Addiction is disconnect. Do you see the misplaced instinctual drive to connect, attached to everything except for where it actually fits? Right? Connection, disconnect. Addiction is disconnect. It's that disconnect, and then it's trying to fill that void with something else. What void? The internal void, first of all. That connection to self. When we went through that lessons from addiction, it got us down to our core. When we hit rock bottom, there's nothing else except for ourselves. So the next step has to be in alignment with cyclical balance, understanding internal ecosystems, internal physical, mental, emotional, spiritual ecosystems.
Brother.
So contemporary society is trying to, with all the ideologies and, printed currency, capitalism's addiction. Capitalism is the exact same thing. It's addiction to printed currency. Greed is jonesing and fiending for printed currency. But same thing, that same psychological profile, whether it's cocaine or printed currency, it's the same thing. So here's lessons from addiction. Let's see this on a societal level. And so, first of all, we don't want to get caught up in it again. And that takes the same skills that we use to disengage from alcohol, drugs, Twinkies, whatever, is to check ourselves and, am I getting too focused on printed currency, too focused on the time, too focused on contemporary government? I say, our species isn't going to buy or vote its way into the future. So what does that leave us with? It's understanding. It's
ourselves.
Understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Going through my notes here. 8:17. Thinking we're doing pretty good. Caught in negative eddies, right? This is resonating with everybody. Filling internal voids with external things, incomplete cycles. Somatic archaeology, kind of a newer term, but it's basically saying that our incomplete emotional cycles. It's really windy here tonight. I don't know if you guys can hear that.
Brother.
No,
Yeah.
you can't. You can't hear the wind.
Oh, good.
Let's have good equipment or whatever. Sounds really good.
Tom, did you have something to chime in there?
Yeah, I have something here. You talked about characteristics and behavior. Growing up among my people here, well, I should say the people. I don't like to say selfish. The people here. There's something I really realized and noticed, and it's addicting too. And it's not the substance itself. When you talked about behavior and characteristics, that's something here too. People really, especially with social media, really love to pass on that bad news, or they want to get that bad news. You know, I'll give you a good example. I told you about my cousin. Techia hecha okuja tipi chwa. You know, she's laying over there in a hospital, very hard, cancer.
Just
You know,
gonna
she
say
got
yes
time.
for them. Uh-huh.
But you know, through this whole motion, you know, she called me and she told me something wrong with me, cousin. But I'm gonna go get it checked out. And she thought it was her teeth. See, me as a Ikjewichasha, as a common man, that's how I saw it. Petrus blockade, that's how I saw it.
Ah.
Okay, there's something wrong with her teeth. Well, she went in. And when she went in, that's when she found out she had that cancer in her stomach. So here's the thing. Now she told me, she said she's sick. I'm sick, Tommy. So I said, well, I'll pray for you. See, I didn't go into, bad negative thoughts. That's what happens here. So that's all I said. We'll check you out. We'll check you out. I told her that. I'll make a prayer for you. I didn't think of that sickness. But here's my relatives. They call me, and after they call me, 1 o'clock in the morning. Hey, did you know that Gwen's got cancer? Blah, blah. And that's all it was. It was phone calls full of that. Not one of them, hey, you know what, Tommy, you know what? My niece has cancer, or my grandniece or my granddaughter has cancer. Can you pray? Let's pray. Never. It wasn't like that. It was all about this ugly ass cancer, and people love to spread it. And it kind of mushed down. It like my little 4-year-old, her name is Zayden Fade. I like how she says it. It mushes down your spirit, and Uncle.
Oh.
And that's what it did that day. But I was like, man, I can't believe these guys are so into this negative, passing this negative around. So that itself is an addiction with characteristics and behavior. And me, this is my opinion. I blame it largely on boarding school. Because boarding school took a lot of our pride away, especially how they were forced and beaten and traumatized and killed and tortured. So that's just something that's my own opinion, though. But anyways, brother, that's what I wanted to tell you. Oh, Pilama, Hetrite.
Uh-huh. I appreciate that. That's something that talking about codependency, and that, the one thing that an addict doesn't want to be around when they're fixing is someone sober. And you could say that the liar, the offensive thing to a liar is the truth. And so if people are caught in addiction, they want to be around other addicts, and here's another societal reflection. Now I'm talking about, it has to be said plainly, but Americana, and when I say Americana, I mean in the broad spectrum, colonial, mandated governments, the ideology of mandating behavior and keeping the sickness, and I call it a construct because I don't want people to think that it's like a mastermind conspiracy, even though there's some bullshit going on. But the main thing is that, narcissist, addict, they just, it doesn't make sense because their thought process isn't working right. But they don't want wellness around them because it makes them feel bad. It's going to make them do that introspect. And they're not ready to do that introspect, so that negativity, and even in the wellness community, I'll do this parallel. In the wellness community, there's a lot of people that are just there, skimming the sympathy. Washichu, fat taker, same parallel, just trying to skim the sympathy instead of actually doing the work and doing the growth and giving back and understanding, these cycles that we need to, within, and then what happens within happens above, right? What happens below happens above. That one, I know Tom knows this. but here we are, we're relating to natural cycles. We're relating to things that people have known about people since people been people and just got cut off via boarding schools. All these things I said, that's what Tom said, is that the boarding schools took that out of the people that knew these things and that lived these things. I'm just repeating. I'm just, I'm just repeating what Tom's not saying, but I'm repeating what I'm saying what Tom's being, what Tom's ancestors are being. But that's, that people knew these things about cycles and this connection to the environment and how people actually function and have these cohesive societies. But if there's sick people don't want well people around them. That's a threat. Then that's a threat to ideology, to know that people can function independently and that if you have wellness, then you don't need illness. And there's that codependency, and there's that narcissism. There's the narcissist, right? Scarcity mindset. Narcissist doesn't have their own wellness. They want to attach to your wellness and try to, when they say energy vampires, but it's just because that narcissist has shifted their energetic focus from their internal. They're not growing their own wellness. They want to sit there and feel that wellness from you. And it ends up constricting, just like any pathogen, it gloms onto its host, and ultimately it kills its host. So, lessons from natural science about pathogens and what's going on. I might as well continue here. Then the narcissist groups of narcissists create colonialism. Now there's a whole society that's conducive to addiction. And what's the focus? Printed currency, because it doesn't have any naturally occurring parameters. When we transcended addiction, when we went through addiction, we recognize naturally occurring parameters in our mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical. Naturally occurring parameters. Why? Because we're on the planet. There's naturally occurring parameters on the planet. There's naturally occurring parameters and cycles within us. This is life. All these interconnected ecosystems, all these interconnected cycles, infinitely interwoven in that, and understand this infinite aspect of life, that there's no done, there's no finish, no done, right?
No end. There's no end.
There's no end. Say it in Spanish, please.
No, no hay. What did I say? No hay
tan.
un tan. No hay tan. Yeah, no hay un tan. There is no tan. We said that, Charlene, because in most Hispanic Latino songs, the ending goes tan. So I said there's no tan to everything. Everything that you go through in life has no end. It's just cycles. So there's no tan. That's right. What I came up with.
Just like this conversation doesn't have an end. These are ongoing conversations about human behavior, which is, human behavior is organism behavior on this planet, cycles, internal cycles. We're using some contemporary language, to kind of explain these things, and using some commonalities like addiction to explain these ecosystems and how they're, internal, external, and societal, right? So we just went through colonialism, capitalism, colonialism, a societal construct devoid of the recognition of inner and external environments. That cognitive dissonance that is present in every addict, that is ignoring that is consciously or half consciously ignoring that need to connect, to self, that need to connect to environment. No wonder society as a whole is so bad off. And then the Is that everyone's gone here? No, there's a couple people here still. Capitalism is crack in its colonized form. The Coke and printed currency, crack and printed currency, same thing. The addicts fiending and jonesing for crack, and greed is just fiending and jonesing in its corporate form, but it's the same psychological profile, and it's the same substance abuse, right? Printed currency, that's just a tool. It represents value. It's not value. It facilitates trade. It's easier to carry around, but you could say that about all kinds of medicines. You could say that about, all kinds of natural medicines if they're, overused, or if the focus. The other thing I say is when the focus shifts from, all right, we've got a tool that's got an application, and when the focus shifts from the application to the tool, that's addiction. So if we're using printed currency to reflect value and exchange and trade, that's okay. But when so we're creating value and trading it, and that printed currency reflects that. I'll say a business thing that I use for corporate wellness, but we're all trading, and we're trading energy first. Energy is our first commerce. All right. So books, Business of Being Human. So I'll put that in, right? And it's using business to explain some of these things, but business is creating something of value and exchanging it for something of fair compensation. If an entity is taking something of value and not giving fair compensation, then that entity is not conducting business. They're just using the concept of business as a guise to plunder. So capitalism is not value focused. The capitalism is not focused on giving value. Capitalism is focused on just accumulating printed currency. And of course, printed currency is doesn't have any intrinsic value. It only reflects value. So that's, another big thing about, societal addiction. Another thing about addiction is that hyper-focus chasing a singular thing with a high self-destruction and collateral damage aspect. Oh, crack capitalism. Hyper-focus chasing a singular thing with high self-destructive and collateral damage. So what are these symptoms of addiction? What do we see addiction when someone's doing behavior that's destructive to themselves, and there's a physical substance attached via, ingestion, the classic examples of addiction. But what about when people's ideology is first hurting themselves because it's not conducive to growth? It's not conducive to them working within their natural parameters of their internal ecosystems, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual ecosystems, right? That hyper focus on printed currency, ideologies, whatever, written law, written religion. People are shortcutting that, looking for a quick fix instead of being in the now and in the context and connecting to our own inner compass and our own inner cycles. It's the ideology that there's a quick fix available, that we can shortcut those things. And then now we're back full circle to the beginning of addiction, is the ideology that we can shortcut these natural inner processes. It's 8:30. I'm going to try to roll through this a little bit more so we can get to the after party conversation. My notes say, this is my first one. My notes say, okay, but what did we learn? Where is the so-called lesson? I think we pointed to some of those lessons, some of those parallels. I think that's the main thing, is to see these parallels, see the parallels with the addiction, with a substance, and then also what's our internal lessons. One of the big things is I like this. It's called Watch Out for the Grizzly Bear. It's recognizing anxiety is the first step towards transmuting anxiety, scarcity mindset, being acutely aware of our inner habitat and external surroundings, right? So everything on this planet has a hyper awareness, the capacity for acute awareness. And for most of humans' existence, we had to watch out for threats, grizzly bears, mountain lions, or slipping and falling, or cutting ourselves. We didn't have the hospital. So, or at least not the medicine that we have today. So that results in an atrophy of our acute awareness. So now when it's something that we need to watch out for in our inner environment, like that anxiety, like, oh, I'm wanting to use again. We got to watch out for that want to use. We got to watch out for that anxiousness coming in. And the same way we'd watch out for a grizzly bear. If we were in bear country and it was spring and the bears are just coming out and we have a pocket full of salmon, you know, we need to keep that acute awareness for what's coming in our ecosystem. And also what's coming in, we can use that. Here's lessons from addiction again. We can use that for what's coming in our energetic field, and to keep an eye on what's coming in our energetic field and who's in our energetic field. So, oh, boundaries, right? So see how addiction all these lessons from addiction, that's a first step towards us recognizing boundaries with other people, is what's coming in our energetic field, that acute awareness. So understanding some of these things that we can that we can grasp from our personal journey through addiction, that we learned boundaries. We learned boundaries with ourselves. We learn how to create boundaries, how to say, no, I can't. How to say no. We're learning how to say no. Okay, so no, I'm not going to ingest this physical thing, but what about ingesting mental, emotional, spiritual things, right? This is lessons from addiction. This is what I'm talking about. Let's use our experience and bring it up to these next levels, not just physical, because there's a part that the physical is just a result of what's happening in the mental, emotional, spiritual. This is about, lessons from addiction 101. When we talked about this already, but admit there's a problem, right? Identify the challenge. Oh, there's that challenge. There's that connection to challenge. See, life, I'm going to go back a second. There's lessons going through life all the time. And what are those lessons? Oh, we connected with challenge. Oh, reconnecting with challenge. Was it something that we chose to go through addiction? No, it was freaking traumatic. But here's some of the lessons. And this is the thing where people say that the worst thing that happened to them was also the best thing that happened to them, because they saw some of these lessons. Connect with challenge, admit there's a problem, or admit when there's something wrong, or identify a challenge when we're talking about societal issues. We're here, we're we're growing ourselves, we're growing society, we're helping understand our species, the place of our species. This is this is what I call the universal lessons that we can gain from our individual experience, and how to give back, right? Something missing in contemporary culture, that give, but in that nature, everything gives back. So we've got this cyclical, we've got this constant cycle of receiving and giving. Regrowing our connection to everything. Regrowing our connection to everything. Everything counts. Every step we take counts. There's that acute awareness again. What we take in counts. What we give out counts. Everything counts. Tom's not here. Someone else is here lurking. They're not on, but that's, Tom would say mitakiye. Oh, you see, mitakiase. Connection to everything. That's an ancestral. That's like for some cultures, or at least one that I know, that's like a central understanding connection to everything. But that's, lost in colonialism, in contemporary culture. This is not just about us as individuals. These are societal issues that we're talking about, reflected in the individual, reflected in the society, and both those things intrinsically interconnected. The individual makes the society. So there's our point to grow from and help contribute. It's always going to come back to the individual, because you can't just, these words, we can say something to each other directly and we get this direct exchange. When we start to put this voice out, if we're going to, put this voice out to everybody, it's going to dilute. So it's important that we understand our abilities as individuals and our place as individuals, that we matter. We don't need to have a political office or some kind of social status. Sorry, my phone's going off. We don't need to have a social status to make a difference. That's a delusion. That's a false narrative perpetuated in colonialism. We don't need to be a boss. We don't need to be any of those things. We need to be individuals. Oh, there's that lesson from addiction again. Individuals. The individual strength that we have is what we need to connect with, to reconnect with, understand that connection to everything. Connecting whole relationships with self, challenge of life or death, recognizing challenge, engaging the value of engaging in challenge on a general level in life on this planet. Physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, recognizing these human facets and the interconnectivity between them and how balance feels. When addiction manifests physically, it's a reflection of voids in our mental, emotional, spiritual habitats. Those mental, emotional, spiritual habitats are absent in addiction. They're neglected. And so by re-embracing those is one of those things that helps us transcend the physical addiction. Something to note, law of attraction, void attracts void. So if we have voids in our life, there's going to be a natural tendency for those to attract. So we need to recognize where there's a void. And remember when we use the term eddies and whirlpools, I like that, life's a river and there's eddies, and, we get stuck in an eddy without growth, without that main flow. So to understand when we need to pull ourselves out of the eddy into the flow of life again, and understand when we have voids, recognize those voids and pull ourselves out. Okay. I'm just gonna read some more of this.
How do you say hurry up in Lakota?
Ask
That's the
Shantae.
sister. I didn't know her name.
Hunter.
How do you say it?
Hunter. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh. Is it
Ianka.
without
Ianka, isn't it?
Ianka? You told me. Okay, Ianka.
Oh, is it?
Ianka.
Oh, I just heard everybody saying Hunter.
Addiction introduced us not only to habits, but also habitat, and it introduced growth, understanding, challenging, connection to self, understanding of our own habitat, helps transmute anxiety, transmuting anxiety in the ability to see negative cycles without a physical substance. Understanding societal addiction, illness, colonialism, hatchery fish. And I know Shantae has a background also in wildlife biology. And so this is the easiest way to talk about colonialism is the hatchery fish. They're trapped swimming around in a cement pond with no chance of escape, eating whatever's being fed to them. Typically that's Purina dog chow labeled as Purina trout chow. So that's colonialism. So we need to, when we talk about jumping out of the eddies, we need to like jump out of that pond. We need to get enough momentum to jump out of that pond and you know, get into a natural flow. And I will add, without contaminating the natural flow with colonial disease. Addiction is prevalent in contemporary society. What allows us to transcend societal issues? I think we've already kind of, you know, gone over that. That's that lessons from addiction, to understand it in itself and then be able to, you know, see it when others are perpetuating addiction and when others are in negative cycles and they can't see because that's what they've grown up in, right? The hatchery fish doesn't know that it should be a wild fish. You know, when people grow up, there's all kinds of examples, you know, when people grow up in, you know, a negative habitat, they're apt to repeat and transgress and perpetrate those negative cycles onto others. That's like addiction 101, habitat. Also, Shantae has professional experience in addiction too, and community, as well as, you know, a lot of people that that I know. We're all, you know, trying to, you know, work out these things and help have these conversations. You know, this is a good space for us to have these conversations, and then we can take these conversations, we can take them out. You know, this is a safe space for us to, you know, model these conversations and, you know, build our skill sets, right? We're being proactive, we're being intentional, we're building our skill sets, we're building our understanding. Now, we can see people with addictions, an addiction to ideology, and, you know, and help transcend that, help them transcend, help us understand, and not enabling is another huge lesson from addiction. And I want to say, I'm trying to wind it up here a little bit. I think that in talking about addiction on a societal level, I want to say that I think that the stereotypical, forgive the terminology here, but I want to say that the stereotypical street addict is closer to wellness than the average, quote unquote, well-adjusted American. Here's why. Because adjusting to a sick society is not wellness. Wildlife biology says that you cannot have a healthy organism in an unhealthy habitat. The average person that thinks they're well adjusted in a sick society is the hatchery fish that's perpetrating trauma on the rest of society, codependent. You have to know there's a problem in order to fix it. If you don't think you have a problem and you're an addict, right? We all know where this is going. Then the person has to go through all the internal work of getting down, readjusting their mentality to accept the fact that they have a problem. And especially if we're talking about societal things, the people that aren't down with society, that know that they don't fit in society, that their spirit won't let them fit in with society, don't have to deconstruct their colonial ideology. They know things are fucked up. We have to know things are fucked up in order to change them. In case anyone here doesn't know, and I'm just being dramatic, I know everyone here does, but in case everyone doesn't know, the human species is killing the planet it walks on and lives in. You think there's not some deep shit to understand? So look at, you know, there's balance. If there's a big problem, the solution's not going to be quick fix. Oh, there's lessons from addiction again. There's no quick fix here. There's no quick fix. This is an ongoing conversation all day, every day, just like our other lessons from addiction. Watch for that grizzly bear. Be acutely aware for negativity coming in and getting us off track for even fixing these societal issues. Society as a whole, most people aren't receptive to wellness. I don't want to say they don't want wellness, because I think that in everybody there's that part of life that we can connect to. And so do that. And I know some of you know this, talk to people's, connect with that part of people. Don't perpetuate their illness. Find that little part of wellness that might be really, really buried up in there. And they might not see it. You might not even see it, but we know it's there. Speak to it, and nurture that out, bring that out. And I just glazed over that boundaries. Those boundaries that's our wellness, to make sure that we're keeping our habitats healthy and our external habitats healthy, and when we do things, when we put wellness quotes on our refrigerator, sage on our dash, good wellness books by our bed, fill our environments with these things that are wellness. When we watch Gabor Mate, Sadhguru, Eckhart Tolle, Frank Fool's Crow, whoever, each other, we pass these along. That's why we're Facebook friends, because we pass along this positivity. We have good wellness things. We have good tools for wellness in our Facebook ecosystem, in our Facebook habitat. So, and then, if people jump on our post and start, being sideways, start being some kind of way, we say, hey, not here, and hopefully we can, do that in the best way that we can. But also we're modeling, we're always modeling. And I like to say every day, our life, we're either facilitating growth or enabling addiction, so let's be acutely aware of that. And I think I'll wind it up there. Last note, more in-depth discussion about these specific topics available upon request. That concludes, a little bit late, we almost went a half hour. That concludes the formal part of this evening's workshop, Lessons from Addiction. Thank you all for joining. And I just got someone said, read the last part where I just said more in-depth discussion about these specific topics available upon request, or the part before that. What did I say before that? I said,
Well, I think it was more like facilitating growth.
Oh, yes. Thank you. We're always in our life, we're always either facilitating growth or enabling addiction.